for being here. You know, this series of community conversations has been such an inspiration. It has been a delight for me to get to know many folks who are telling their stories. But I just walk away from each one of these with such an amazing sense of awe that folks are willing to come and tell about their stories. And who better to tell them than people who have lived them? And so, first of all, before I introduce them, I want to thank not only this group, but the groups that have come to talk to us before and who are sharing their stories about situations that they've been in, but more importantly, about the triumph that they have had over those circumstances. And so it's remarkable. And so thank you for being here. If you are interested in the first two community conversations that we have had so far, please go to the city's YouTube channel and you will find them there. You'll find them both to be just really interesting to watch. And we have one last series, I Live with Mental Health Challenges, and we'll be talking about folks who really, again, have lived experience and who are going to talk about their journey or their family members' journey through the mental health illness and their experiences with that. And so you'll find that one to be incredibly interesting as well. And you just go to our website and register as you did for this one. A few other events that are coming up, and you found all this propaganda, if you will, on your chairs. The first is we are getting ready to have a new funding cycle. That's really a big part of our job here, is to return money to the community to help make it a healthier place to live and work. And if you are interested in applying for funding from us as a nonprofit agency, you are welcome to come to either one of these workshops. They are Wednesday and Thursday of this week. And again, register online and they're free. And even if you aren't interested in applying to us, if you want to know more about us, or if you are a grant writer in general, or if you're seeking funds from an agency, we try to give you a sense of writing good grants, how to articulate your idea, how to make it a compelling story to a funder. So even if you're not thinking about applying to us, you may find it interesting. Another thing that you don't have any information about, but our annual meeting. Every year we have an annual meeting with the community. This year it's on June 17th. And we're going to be talking at that annual meeting about place and how place matters. In fact, your very own street address may dictate what your health status is in Lincoln. You'll see on the wall over here, we have been busy mapping our community and looking about where you live and whether or not it impacts your health status. And we're going to be unveiling some of this information. And we're also going to have an expert from San Francisco from the Federal Reserve Bank, who works with the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, talk about place and how place is so significant to your family's health, to its economic status, and to the overall health of the community. So join us then. And again, that can be done registering online. The last thing I want to mention to you is our wellness series. And this is a new thing for us, but we have this beautiful building. We're blessed to have this place where we can invite you all to come and join us. But we also, there's a community room downstairs that's operated by the Parks and Recreation Department. And from June 2nd to August 21st, on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, we're going to have wellness classes down there, free and open to the public. From time to time, they may even move out into the amphitheater and have their classes. But Tai Chi on Tuesdays, yoga on Wednesdays, and walking club on Thursdays. So if you are interested, there's no pre-registration. Come, join us, and be part of kind of discovering the trails here in the heart of the city. So I think I have all of those things covered. Now, on to today's program. You know, I want you all to, when I was thinking about today, I thought for a moment about home and what home means to me. And when I think about home, my specific home, I think of my house. I think of the things that I have in my house, far too many things. I think of the memories that are there, of the things that really have happened there, both good and sometimes sad. You know, there's whole stores in this city that are devoted to nothing more than buying stuff for your home. There are people who do nothing more for a job than help you come design your home and to put stuff on your walls and all those kind of things. So when you think about your home, imagine how different it is when you would say, I don't have one. Imagine how that would change your perspective of the world, how it would change your perspective of life in general. So that's what we're here to talk about. We're really here to talk about stories of people who lived that experience of not having a home. You know, the most recent point in time count, which is a study they do in Lincoln that counts the number of homeless folks that are in our community, identified almost 1,000 people in Lincoln that are homeless, and nearly a third of them were children under the age of 19. So we have these three folks who have agreed to share their stories with us, as well as Monica Zinke, who's really an expert on this topic from here in Lincoln, who's going to moderate the panel. But I'm going to give a quick introduction, and then I'm going to turn over to the real important work of today. The first thing I want to do is talk about Lyn Morrisey. Lyn is there in the white sweater. And Lyn comes from a family with a history of substance abuse, and she struggled with it for years as well. Her longest period of homelessness was from 2004 to 2007. That was when she, in her words, hit bottom, and she is now living a sober life and is currently on the board of directors of Centerpoint. Roger Milton, a former police officer and a Marine Corps veteran, thank you for that, Roger, was homeless several different times and lost it all over a period of time. He was last homeless in 2006, and he wants to help people who are struggling and also help others understand how someone can become homeless and how they can get out of it. Tara Rickel, did I pronounce that correctly? I said hello, Tara, and I didn't ask you how to pronounce it earlier. Was homeless in 2007, and she wants to help people understand how easy it is that it could happen to anyone. She currently works at an insurance company, but she'd love to work in human services, right? Yes. Wink, wink to some of you in the group. And is back at school working on her master's degree in business. And last but not least, Monica Zinke is the executive director of Fresh Start. She has 20 years of experience in social services, and she's worked in a variety of capacities, from housing to homelessness to domestic violence to disaster services and mental health. She's a licensed social worker and a licensed mental health practitioner. She serves on the executive committee of the Lincoln Homeless Coalition, who is our partner for this event today, and will serve as our moderator as well. So again, thank you for your courage and your bravery, and we're excited to hear from you all. Please welcome the group today.
Thank you, Lori. As Lori mentioned, that I'm here representing Lincoln Homeless Coalition in addition to Fresh Start. So I just wanted to give you an introduction to what the Lincoln Homeless Coalition does as well, so you understand where I'm coming from and our point of view. The Lincoln Homeless Coalition is a membership group comprised of agencies here in Lincoln that all have a program or a service involved in helping people with their housing needs or helping people who are homeless find and secure safe and permanent housing. There's about 40 agencies that come together for that and talk about those issues on a larger extent as far as how our community can improve and look at things like the point in time count. And there's also things that we talk about how to help specific individuals and families, not talking about individual names, but how we can do better at that level. So both the micro level and the macro level for our community. And that's the Lincoln Homeless Coalition. And that's who I'm representing here today, along with Fresh Start, who is a transitional shelter here in Lincoln. So we're going to start with just having the panelists tell us a little bit about their experiences being with homelessness and how they've come out of that. That's what we'll focus on today. But we'll start with them sharing a little bit of their experiences during that time. And we're going to start with Lyn.
Thank you. I'm Lyn Morrisey, and I was born here and raised here. My father was an alcoholic. My parents were in business for themselves. My home life was always in an uproar. My father was emotionally, mentally abusive when he got drunk. I left the house a lot. I didn't want to be around it when he'd blow up and when he'd been drinking. And so growing up, when I got into junior high, that's when I started smoking weed and getting into the drugs, because this was back in the 70s. And that's when things started happening with all of the drugs. And so I used that to get away from the hurt and the pain that my father had caused in our family. And I lived with that and ended up getting married when I was like 21. And I ended up marrying a person that was involved in drugs as well. And we ended up moving to Dallas, Texas. And because the drugs got so bad, we ended up getting divorced. So then I moved to California. I have an uncle that lives in California, and he also used drugs as a coping mechanism. And I was a functioning addict, alcoholic for many years. Then I had my daughter when I was 32. After I had my daughter, then my depression set in. And my father had depression and never did anything about it. And I think when he drank, that's what brought the depression out even more and the anger. And so I ended up going and getting help for my depression, and because I just didn't feel like myself, and I just didn't even want to get out of bed, didn't want to communicate or anything. And so I got help with that. And then I ended up getting involved with some more people from the past that were still involved in drugs, and raising my daughter. I raised her till she was about 9 years old, and then I had gotten married and divorced again within 2 weeks, and my husband had left me. And so that gave me another excuse to drink and drug, and I ended up getting so bad. I was on the streets here in Lincoln. I ended up having my parents take care of my daughter. She moved in with my parents. It was really bad. I was going from place to place to stay with people and continued using, and that was my life. That's all I cared about was using and forgetting what had happened and dealing with the things in my life. And I ended up leaving Lincoln because I didn't want my daughter to see how bad it was going to get. And I went out to California, and I ended up on the streets in California. I had some friends out there that were also on the streets. I lived out there for about 1.5 years on the streets. We would go to different churches and stuff to get food on a daily basis. There was a wonderful group of people of the churches around there that would bring you clothes and just make sure that, you had your necessities in order to survive. And because of the weather was so nice there, it was a year-round thing. My addiction got so bad that I was drinking probably 2/5 of vodka a day. I had to drink vodka in order to get up, to wake up, and to even walk. It was so bad. And so my boyfriend that I had back then, we decided that we wanted to get out of the rut that we were in, and so we decided to go to Las Vegas. I had gotten some money through a retirement that I had, and we went to Las Vegas trying to get back on our feet. It was my birthday, and we decided to celebrate my birthday and do a little gambling, a little drinking. And then as we got throughout the day, as we got more intoxicated, I decided that I wanted some drugs in order to keep going and in order to keep celebrating my birthday. And so I gave him the money to get the drugs, and I went to the little quick shop or whatever it was, and I came back, and I thought he was going to get speed, and he ended up getting heroin. And it was just a $10 little bag of black tar heroin. Because it was my birthday, I wanted to do it first, and so we split the $10, went out. I don't know how long we were out. When I woke up, it was dark outside, and he was dead next to me. So I was out on the streets in Las Vegas, knowing nobody. I was lucky enough to have met a friend of George's that did live in Las Vegas, and I went to him and asked him what to do, and he said, well, you got to call 911. And I was just in shock. It was like I was in a bad nightmare. And when they came and told me that the coroner came, and it happened in the back of a behind a movie theater. And when they came and told me that he was definitely gone, I didn't know what I was going to do. So this friend of his took me in for about 3 days, and I called my mom, told my mom what happened. And he didn't want me to get on the bus to come back here right away. He wanted to kind of help me go through what exactly happened and accept exactly what happened, because he knew he was in the drug scene and he had been through a lot of things in his life, so he really helped me work through it. And my mom sent me a ticket to get on the Greyhound bus, and I got on that bus. I only had maybe a couple beers to get on that bus with. I had to keep drinking in order to not be sick getting home. And when I got off that bus, when it came to Lincoln and got off that bus, there was my daughter and my mom standing there waiting for me. And it was the most, it was a feeling that I can't describe, that I knew I was home and I knew everything was going to be okay. And they both came up and hugged me and said everything was going to be okay. Then I got myself into treatment at Touchstone. The people there helped me work through a lot of my problems that I had growing up and facing a lot of things that I hadn't faced while I was using and drinking. And then I ended up moving into a 3-quarter house. I stayed there for about 8 months, and I was doing really good. My daughter was even staying there with me, and then I was able to get a job and get an apartment, and my daughter moved in. She then got pregnant, and she was 17, and so I ran into an old friend, and this old friend came over to see me and brought a 12-pack of beer. And that's what started it all over again. Just drinking that one beer, and then it was 2, 3, 4, go get another 12-pack. And I ended up losing my place to live over that. I ended up losing my job. I moved in with him. That got to be abusive and physical. He had called my other job that I had got and told them that I was nothing but a drug addict and a drunk, and, to watch. So I lost that job because of him as well. And because of the abuse that he had with the cop, things happened with the police and all this other stuff, I ended up moving into the friendship home. And I ended up getting away from him, and the people at the friendship home were so helpful in me trying to get my life back together. I got into another apartment, and I started drinking again. I had a friend that I met in the friendship home that her and I went out drinking, and so then I ended up losing my other apartment, and so I ended up on the street again. And I knew that I had to get back into Touchstone, and this time I knew what I did wrong. I knew that going back with old friends and meeting up with old friends is what caused me to relapse and go back into that kind of lifestyle. And after I went through Touchstone, I definitely wanted to have some aftercare. And so I had aftercare through Centerpoint, who is a lifesaver. The people there that have helped me deal with all of my bills, all of my stuff, all my garbage that was behind me, helped me get all of that squared away so that I can move on and start a new life. They also helped me get an apartment, and I knew that if I went back out there again, that I'll be dead the next time, because I'm lucky to even be alive now. And so being sober now for 5.5 years are the best years of my life. I'm so grateful to the help and the resources that Lincoln has to help people get back on their feet. And without those people that cared and treated me like a human being, that loved me and that supported me, and by the grace of God, it's the only reason that I'm alive today. So Lincoln has such good resources to help people. The problem is a lot of the people don't want the help, or they don't know how to get the help. And the first part of it is you have to surrender, and realize, how you got there, and really want to get out of there and what you want for yourself. So it was a long process for me. It was over, a 20, 30-year period that all of this happened to me. And I'm finally sober, and I have a full-time job that I've had for 5 years now. And I have 2 grandsons, and my mother is still alive. My dad passed away, and it's really rewarding to have the family that I have and the people that I have in my life today that have helped me get to where I'm at. And I no longer have anything to do with people from my past. If I run into somebody, I run the other direction. I know what got me back into things, and I realized all that, so I know what to stay away from. I know what situations not to put myself into. And for being as happy and free as I am today, I'm just really grateful to what Lincoln's done. So.
Thank you very much, Lyn.
Thank you.
You'll hear, yes, we should clap. We'll hear from 3 people today, and you'll notice a common theme, essentially, of how much strength I think it takes for them to have come out of that situation, and how it's not an easy situation. There's multiple issues and multiple factors. And so thank you, Lyn. And so now we'll hear from Roger.
Good afternoon. My name is Roger Milton. I'm originally from New Orleans, Louisiana, and I didn't grow up in an alcoholic home. Neither parent drank, and my home was like a sanctuary because I lived in a housing project, and it was very dangerous. I saw a lot of things that kids my age shouldn't see, but I started drinking at 4 years old, and I think it was part of having to live in that type of community. But once I made it home, it was sanctuary. I went to church every Sunday. My parents were in church every Sunday. Neither drank, but I did. And I've been drinking all my life, ever since 4 years old. But I hadn't drank alcoholically until I crossed that line that they speak about. And I did well. I went to college for a couple of years. I joined the Marine Corps. I did well in there. And I came out and became a police officer. I did well. And then alcoholism took over. I stopped drinking because it was luxury. It became a necessity. And that eventually led, after I resigned from the police department, it led me into drugs, because when I get drink, I lose all inhibitions. I was using anything I can get my hands on. I never did figure out why I was drinking and using like that until much, much later. But my wife took care of me for as long as she can. I got married. I had a couple of sons. One of my sons is a doctor. The other one was a pilot in the Navy. My family was doing well. I could never find a reason for being homeless except me. It was my fault, and it was caused because drugs and alcohol, and it was over a period of a long time that it happens. It didn't happen the day I get put out. It affected me the day that I got put out, because one day you're in a house and the next day you're not. And I had nothing in my life that ever prepared me for being homeless. There's nothing they teach in school. There was nothing they taught me socially, church, nowhere else. It's a complete blank. You have nowhere to go. So I had to get information for people who had been homeless for a while, and that's what I did. I left with the clothes on my back, not knowing where to go, so I went where I used to go and drink and use. I knew the people down there. So what I did was I found a guy who had been homeless for about 9 or 10 years, pushing a shopping cart, and I had seen him. We had drank before, so I asked him, what should I do? I'm homeless. And here I found myself getting advice from someone who was probably worse off than me. He said, you know what we have to do? And I can hear myself now saying, what? So here I am going to take the advice of this guy, and guess what? It helped. I had no way of knowing. He said, the first thing we have to do is you have to get a place to stay. I said, where? He said, come on, I'm going to take you down to the railroad tracks and get you a couple of boxes. So we got 2 big washing machine boxes, and we call it a 2-bedroom cardboard condominium. And they said, you can live in the alley with us. And we don't nothing from nothing. I thought this was pretty good. At least I'll have a place to stay where I know somebody and I won't be in the rain. So I put those 2 boxes together, and I got some concrete and put a couple of candles on, and I got my hands, I won't say how, on some blankets and sleeping bags and I went into this house. And surprisingly enough, I was comfortable. That's how bad off I was. It was better than walking around all day looking for someone who would let me in who had air conditioning. And so I would go in there, and I actually had a person crawl in there one time and look around and say, "This is nice." And I'll never forget that. I thought it was nice. But I was still drinking and using. And my wife had a restraining order, so I tell people I was legally homeless, if there's such a thing. But I stayed down there for 3 years. In this, drinking. Every time I thought about getting out of the homeless situation, I would come up with a million excuses. Most of them were fear-based. And pride, ego, shame, guilt, all of those things, that's what kept me down there. And I could get rid of those things with alcohol and drugs. And I did. Finally, I got too bad off, and I would go and take a shower once a week, once every other week. And I would go to somebody's house who would allow me to come in and take a shower with Matt, and I did that. Until it just got so bad that I went to a county program. I stayed 90 days. They told me everything I needed to know to stay sober. I listened, but I didn't hear. So I came out and did the same thing again and ended up right back where I was. Now, this time it was different. I knew a little bit about homeless now, so it was easier. It was easier to be homeless, and I found that out too. And I met people who had found out it was easy for them to be homeless because they had learned to survive down there. They didn't want to come out. I didn't want to come out for a long time. I could fix my problems with drugs and alcohol. Why change anything? You know? So what I did was I stayed as long as I could. Finally, it got too much again. I went to the Veterans Administration Hospital. I hadn't heard about that. There's not many resources in the homeless community. They're available, but the people in the homeless community, if they know about them, they don't want to use them, and they're certainly not going to share them with you because they need you there with them. You come up with some things they can use, you know, it's like a subculture. So I finally found out from a guy kind enough to tell me about the Veterans Administration in Los Angeles. That's where I went. I stayed a year. I stayed a whole year. They fixed everything. They fixed mental, physical. I had surgeries, and I stayed 1 whole year, and I got sober. I went back down there. I stayed sober for about a year, maybe a little less than a year, and I relapsed into my own thinking once again. Long before I took a drink, I relapsed into my old behavior and old way of thinking. And that led me back to drink, to get rid of the restless, irritable discontent that I felt. I had nothing. And so that led me to be remorseful and guilty once again. And I went back to what worked for me. Alcohol worked for me. And I went back out there. I went back downtown where I was, here again, another 2 years. Finally, I got tired and cold and hungry, angry, lonely, and tired and afraid, and went back to the VA. This time, I was able to stay sober. I was sober for 2 years when I came to Lincoln to live with a friend of mine who lived here. And when he moved, I was still sober 2 years. But I found out I wasn't treating the alcoholism and the drug addiction. I just was dry. And that felt worse than when I could drink to feel better. I didn't never feel better. My blood pressure rose. I had blood in my eyes. I was miserable. I didn't go but to 1 meeting a week, and I didn't say nothing. I didn't know anybody. So I heard about the program that he had went to here at the Veterans Administration here on 70th. It's an outpatient program. So I went in there, and immediately I began to feel better. I saw a doctor who gave me some medication for the blood pressure, and I entered into their long-term outpatient treatment. And I stayed there. I'm still there. I still go there to volunteer. And I'm going to continue to go because I go to help the people who can learn what I've learned there. And I'm happy to be here because that's what I do now. I'm retired, and I spend my time being of service. A kind deed once in a while for me won't work. I have to spend my time helping people with what I found out, because even though the resources are there, the information of how to get to them, the transportation to get to them, and the inclination to get to them is not always in a person's mind who's homeless. He needs to live for today. He can't think of going Monday to a program. So that's what I do today. And I'm glad to be here to be able to share that, because I know what cost me to be homeless, And I know the courage and the humility that it took to get out of the homelessness. It didn't take courage. Like she said, it took surrender. I had to become humble enough to admit I can't do this by myself. And I was surprised when I went to the VA and the people who helped me, one of which is sitting in this room, I was treated with respect. I was treated with compassion. The guilt and shame of being homeless was quickly overtaken by the feeling of accomplishment and getting out of it. So I don't suffer from the guilt and shame of being homeless. I figure it's my best asset now. I can use that to help others. So I really believe that, and that's what I do today. I manage 5 sober living houses, and I'm the resource and recovery advocate for the houses. And I mean, people who come out on parole, I'm able to help them because they get out with nothing. And I know what that's like, to have nothing. So I can tell them where the resources are, I can take them there to get it. And that's what it takes sometimes, because if you throw a guy a bus pass and say, here, there's a place to get food down there, well, he don't have no way to get there. He don't have nothing to put the food in. He don't know the city because he's from Scotch Bluff somewhere. So that's what I do. And I do it willingly, and I'm happy to do it. My life is amazing. I've been sober 8 years. My wife has returned. My family is back together. I'm retired. I make enough money to live comfortably. And I'm glad to be here to see you. And I can tell everybody, Lincoln has been a blessing in my life. You, the people of Lincoln, I found big different than California. It's not crowded. I like the weather. When I say that, people laugh. I like the 4 seasons here because I thought Christmas and Thanksgiving was the same as the 4th of July in California, and I like California. But here I get to see the 4 seasons, and I like that. I think it changes with me. I think the seasons change me. My attitude is different because I no longer have that attitude of the policeman or the Marine. That's not who I am. That's what I used to do. Today, my name is Roger. I'm a recovering alcoholic, and I'm glad to be here with you. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Roger, for sharing your story. And everybody's experience with homelessness is different, and everybody's experience of where they needed to stay and what resources they need is different. And so Tara's going to tell us about her experience and what she found herself in. Thanks.
My experience is a bit different. My name is Tara Rickel. I'm actually from Missouri. I moved here with my mom as a teenager. She's now back in Missouri, and that's where all my family is. I had my first son when I was 17, my second when I was 19, and about 8 years ago, I found myself in a very, in a situation that resulted in me not having a home for me and my children. Basically, I never would have thought I would have been there, but I was in a really negative, very toxic, unhealthy relationship, both for not just between me and that person, but for my children. And it was a situation that I needed to get out of immediately. And so I was fortunate enough to have a friend who let me stay with them. At the time, I was a full-time student at SEC, and I was a stay-at-home mom. So I wasn't employed. I was pregnant again, and I didn't have a car or anything to my name. So I basically just kind of took me and my kids' clothes and left. Like I said, I stayed with a friend. At that point, they really helped me out. I was extremely fortunate to have the friends that I did because I had no family here. And my mom, my sisters, everybody was gone. And as supportive as they were over the phone, they couldn't do much from another state. And I could have went there, but my kids' father was here, and I thought it was important that my kids be around their father. So I basically started doing everything I could to figure out what am I going to do? What's my next step? You know, I did try to apply for jobs. Being pregnant didn't help my situation. So unfortunately, I was unable to get a job. However, my friends helped me get my kids to and from school and where they needed to be, and I helped out as much as I could around their home to make it easier for them as well. I started seeking out resources, and Community Action Program is the first one that I came across. And from what I know, at that time at least, it was the only program that was offered to you that considered you homeless without you actually having to be on the street. So you could live with a friend, but you couldn't live with them for more than 6 months. And it had to be a friend that was not a relative or, So I signed up for the program. I started working with a caseworker at Matt Tabbitt Kitchen Outreach. And basically what we did is we kind of established short-term goals, like where are you now? Where do you want to be? How are we going to get there? And what are your first steps that you need to take? So I started taking those steps, and being on that program as well, they put me on the housing list, but I was bumped up ahead of most since I needed a house immediately. I graduated that program and I was able to get my housing voucher. Unfortunately, it was after I had my baby, so I did bring my baby home to a friend's house. I did not have everything that I needed. However, I was grateful that it was very short after that we did get our home. I then started working with Lincoln Housing Authority, and I went through their self-sufficiency program, which is an amazing program. Not just the resources they have, but the individual that I worked with. Like, she became a big part of my life and someone that I could talk to, and even others in Lincoln Housing Authority became a big part of my life and people that I could talk to and go to. I was in their self-sufficiency program, which is a 5-year program, and you make your goals, and you have to succeed within 5 years. Well, my biggest goal out of that, I needed to work on my credit, and I needed to figure out where do I want to go, and how am I going to start getting there. I got a job as soon as my daughter was 6 weeks old, and it was at a daycare, so it was convenient for me. I got to be with my kids. However, as I said, my first goal was to finish my college education. So I wanted to get my associate's degree. I was in the human services program, and I realized I only had like 2 to 3 quarters left. And I'm like, what am I doing? So I went back and I finished. And I actually could have graduated from the program at that time, but I didn't want to. Like, I liked having that support system. I mean, I had friends. I didn't have any family here, but it was a different kind of support. I can't even describe it. I could go in there and feel like I could say anything and not be judged for how I felt or what I was going through. And so I decided to put my next goal on there to obtain my bachelor's degree. And I started school at Doane, and I did graduate with my human relations degree. And then after that, I basically was able to obtain a job at where I am now, and I've been there for almost 4 years. And I love my job. It's very family oriented. It's not necessarily where I'd like to be. I would love to be out helping people and working with young moms or people that were in similar situations as myself. But after I graduated from the program and I got my bachelor's degree, I did actually give up my housing voucher. I did qualify still for a little bit, but I had met someone and we decided to move in together, and we now have a blended family with 5 kids. And I am now working on my master's degree. I'm about a year in for my master's degree in business management. So that's about where I'm at now.
All right, thank you.
3 very different experiences. So we're going to start by asking a couple questions, and then we'll open it up for the crowd for questions as well. So all of you mentioned some challenges that you faced. What would you say, just a few words about what the biggest challenge was that you faced in trying to move out of homelessness once you realized that and came to the point where you were ready to do that?
I can say that finding the reason that I was homeless was as difficult as anything I'd ever done. I thought it was because my wife had put me out. But I didn't see why she had put me out. I didn't see that drugs and alcohol was the problem. I thought it was a solution because I didn't mind being homeless when I'm drunk and wasted. You know, you don't feel it. And I could never see being homeless without it. So I had to find the causes and causes and reasons that I was homeless. And I found that to be in my addiction. And when I treated the addiction, I was able to hear. And when I was able to hear, I had to find the willingness to follow direction or suggestions. And that was the biggest obstacle, to find the cause of homelessness. It's not what you see right on the outside. It leads up to it. It took me years to become homeless, but it happens in a day. One day you got a place to stay, the next day you don't. But it didn't happen that day. There was reasons, and to get out of it is the same way. Finding the reason that you're homeless and being honest enough to admit it to yourself and quit blaming and shoving it to the side. And that's how I got out of being homeless. And it'll happen again. If I don't do what they suggest to do and stay away from the drugs and alcohol, it can happen again because it happens more than once to me. So I'm aware of that. That's the main thing that stopped me from being homeless. I treated the problem. That's what it was.
Lyn or Tara, would you like to?
I think mine was that I had been dependent on someone for so long, so to be independent again was a scary feeling. And not only that, but to have my children that depend on me, to know that I had to be that strong person and no matter what, just continue on, keep making the steps forward. There wasn't a choice. I mean, I knew when I had my first son, and as a teenager, I told myself I want to be independent. Like I want to do something good, but a lot of obstacles got in my way through that. And now I think the best thing I ever did for myself was, after I was through with that whole situation, is I just spent 3 years focusing on me and my kids, and only me and my kids, and what was best for us and where we wanted to be and who I was again. So I think that was one of the biggest challenges, just being independent.
I think for me was finding the right people that understood my story. I had been, throughout the years, I'd been through treatment 3 times, and this was my 4th time of putting myself in there. And I knew how I kept going back out and why I failed. And so the resources that I was directed to and the people that helped me are the ones that really guided me through the right steps to get my own place, to feel worthy of myself and my family, and just all of the understanding and resources that Lincoln has is what made it for me.
My next question for you is, what strength or what skill did you find in yourself that you already knew about, that you used to help get yourself out of homelessness, or maybe that you found out about yourself and surprised yourself with? They didn't know I was going to ask that one. I'm putting them on the spot with that. A strength or a skill that you have?
I think for me, my strength would be the positivity that I have. Even when I was homeless, I still was walking around with a smile on my face, because I find something positive in every situation, and negativity is not, it's something that I run from. So I always make the best out of situations, and I've always been a happy person.
Well, for me, I think the main thing that helped me is I was able to find humility. I didn't have it before. My jobs didn't lend itself to having too much humility. The things I did with my life, I didn't know it was a sign of strength. I thought it was a sign of weakness. And I remember that I'd heard about it in church when I was a kid. I was an altar boy, and the thing that got me out was the things that had been there all along, but blocked out by alcoholism and worldly clamors. And that's what really helped me. I went back to my very beginning and knew that I knew those things, that I had to be humble enough to accept help, that I just couldn't do it, and that's what helped me. I found the strength and humility and the willingness to follow someone who knew something I didn't know, and to get rid of the pride that kept me from doing it. So I found it through the church that had been there all along. I mean, I didn't have to go to church. I had been for 15, 16 years. So I began to use those things that I learned there.
I think mine was that I was stronger than what I gave myself. Like, I didn't realize how strong I was until I actually went through it. And I think that everything that you go through, good and bad, just makes you a stronger person. So,
yeah. Well, I certainly think that they're very strong people up here. And they've also agreed to answer some questions from the group. If anybody has a question that you'd like about their experience or about homelessness here in Lincoln, so we can do that now. Marcia has the microphone, so anybody has a question, just raise your hand.
First of all, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing your stories. We really appreciate it. You guys mentioned commonalities about sometimes having to hit bottom. What would you say to, say we have loved ones who we see they're teetering? with addictions or problems, and we don't want them to hit the bottom yet. Is there a way to convince them or talk with them, or do they all have to just live it themselves?
My suggestion would be to have them talk with someone who has already hit bottom, who knows the way to bottomless. And for the loved ones, I would suggest that they go to the people who have suffered under the same circumstances, who found a way to live. And that's really the best way to do it, because you can't share something you don't know. And if a person comes to me and he's teetering on alcoholism, I can tell him where he's going. Literally. I know where it's going to take you if you don't stop. It's going to take you to jail, institutions, and death if you're lucky. Or you can wobble around in homelessness and misery for many, many years. So I think that's the best thing to do. And I refer people all the time to people who've come out of homelessness, and I refer them to 12-step programs where people have hit bottom. So we know the route to bottomless. So we can help a person see where he is in that route. And if he's willing, he can stop. And he's not going to stop until he's willing. And to the families, I can say, if he's an alcoholic or an addict, or if he's heading in that direction, take him to someone who understands the disease. That's what it is about for me. That's what I do. Yeah.
I think for me, my daughter is my biggest concern. She's 26 now, and she saw some pretty rough stuff with me and her father. Her father's an alcoholic. And it worries me that she will go out occasionally drinking at the bars here in Lincoln. And I know that it is a disease that's inherited, and sooner or later it's going to kick in. She's, kind of dabbling in it now, but if she continues, it's going to happen. And I can't preach to her. I can't, she's an adult. I can't, make her do it. I can't do anything. All I can say is, look what happened to me. You saw it, you saw it firsthand. Mm-hmm. And if you keep doing this, it's going to happen. And I just pray every day that, it doesn't happen, because she's a nurse now, and she's got 2 sons. She's a single parent, and she's got a really good life ahead of her. And if she keeps playing with it, she's going to lose all of that. So she has a lot more to lose than what I did. And so I think just talking to somebody that's been through it, and having somebody that's been through it, they understand what you're going through. And so I think it's a real plus to talk to people that have been through the same thing that you're going through. So,
while you were homeless, what was most helpful to you in terms of outreach programs that tried to assist you?
For me personally, it was the missions. I was never homeless in Lincoln, but when I was homeless in California, the missions, the churches, you could always eat, you could probably take a shower. They would even put you up for a night or two. And other homeless people was most helpful, because they had the experience of knowing where to eat, where to get something to sleep, where to get clothes. Like I said, it's a subculture that really it functions within itself. I had no idea if I would be homeless. I learned from people who were homeless. So that sounds strange, but that really is, that's where we got the information to where these places are that you mentioned. Where can I get a shower? Who feeds on what day? But stores don't have cameras.
And I would have to say for me, it was knowing from a long time ago that I was an addict, I was an alcoholic, and that it is a disease. And so it was easy for me to surrender and put myself back into treatment. And it took all those times of going back to get it through, to have it sink through my head that, this is what's going on, and you've got to learn something from it and do something different. You got to stay away from the people, the places, and you just have to start your life all over again. And you have to want that freedom. It's such a relief not to have that on my shoulders anymore, of wanting or needing to go get, a drink or whatever, and just dealing with life. Dealing with life is so easy. It's harder if you're using or drinking, I think.
Definitely.
I was just wondering if any of you have used the services of AA, and if so, what did you think of it? You think it helped you at all?
Yes, when I was living in a three-quarter house, and in treatment, we started going to AA meetings, and they were helpful because you would hear other people's stories and understand that you weren't alone. For me, I did it for a couple years, but after that, I had to stop. And they want you to be a sponsor, and they want you to, help other people. But for me, I can't take the suffering, watching somebody suffer like I did, and I have to take care of myself first. I don't have enough energy or time anymore that I can put my knowledge into helping somebody else get back on their feet. But AA is a really good group of people, and it did help me a lot.
And for me, that's the foundation of my recovery today. Alcoholics Anonymous and the other 12-step programs, that's where I diagnosed myself in there. That's where I found out what the problem was. The problem wasn't alcohol. The problem was a disease of the mind and an allergy of the body. And most alcoholics don't know that. I didn't know that until I went to AA. I didn't know what kind of help I needed. I thought I just liked to drink and couldn't stop. But I found out I had a mental illness that would compel me to drink because it was an obsession, and once I drank, I had an allergy that took over, and I was drinking beyond my control. I'm able to share that with people today and tell them to get out of that. You're going to have to receive treatment. It's like mental treatment, but it's free. It's an Alcoholics Anonymous, and I sponsor people if they're willing. That's all they need, to be as honest enough with themselves to say that I can't stop. That's the beginning. I can't stop. And that way they're willing to accept the help that we can give them in there. But that's the foundation of my recovery. It works when everything else fails, working with other alcoholics and other addicts.
And if I could say, that's not my only problem. My other problem is the depression. I have major depression, and if I don't take care of myself and make sure that I take my medications, then I'll slip right back into that. And that also has made me slip back into using and substance abuse again. So I have to make sure that I'm on top of my mental health as well in order to keep myself sober. So
this question is for Roger primarily, but it may be beyond the scope of what we're talking about here. The numbers in the newspaper said 70 veterans in Lincoln. Did you run into other veterans while you were homeless?
Oh, in Los Angeles?
And if so, what age groups? Are we talking the old-timers from Vietnam?
That's who I ran into.
Oh, mostly?
Mostly.
Okay.
Yes. Because the time that I was homeless, the guys weren't coming into the VA yet. You usually come into the VA after you've destroyed yourself. So when I got out of Marine Corps, I did good when I came home. But it's after a period of time, the PTSD and that begins to affect you, and we medicated with alcohol and drugs. So I was with the Vietnam veterans, hundreds and hundreds of them down there. You know,
I as well met a lot of vets that were on the street, and it's really sad that how society kind of kicks them to the curb. And I think a lot of it comes down to not having the help when they get back from being in the wars or whatever. And like he said, PTSD. I have a son-in-law that was a Marine, and when he came back from Afghanistan, he was a totally different person, and now he's into the drugs and the alcohol. He doesn't want to admit that he has that or that he needs any help. And that's the problem, is people admitting that they need the help. The pride gets in the way, and it's a real problem. And it's sad.
I'm going to speak to homelessness in Lincoln just for a second. There is still a large number of veterans that are homeless in our community. Thankfully, on a federal level, there's a big initiative to end homelessness among veterans. And here in our Lincoln community, the VA and other veteran service organizations have really been doing a lot to address that. In our community in the last year, homelessness has decreased. Unfortunately, if we look at the last 5 to 7 years, it had been increasing. So we still struggle with it. One of the growing groups of people within the homeless population is actually youth, and youth ages up to 25 is one of the growing groups of homelessness. And the point in time count that Lori mentioned earlier when she said that it was close to 1,000 people in Lincoln, that's just how many people access services on that one point in time. That's why it's called that, on that one day. So the number of people in Lincoln, that are homeless is actually much higher than that. On any given day, we expect that 800 to 1,000 people are receiving services. So other than that one day, there's people that come in for services or that didn't seek services at the time. They weren't ready to seek them, either because of substance abuse or mental health, or because all of these things that impact somebody's homelessness can be very overwhelming. So maybe it's not a huge issue like that, but all those other issues and relationship issues and things pile up and make it difficult to know where to start or to know where to seek services. So on any given day, it's 800 to 1,000 people currently statistically, but it's actually much higher than that as far as the number of people in our community that are experiencing homelessness. So, and then there was another question.
Mm-hmm. This is a question and kind of a comment a little bit for Tara too. Will you talk a little bit about how important it was for you to work with a program that supported your educational goals beyond a minimum wage job, but into an educational goal that could take you beyond that?
It was really important. Honestly, I started college right after high school, and I wasn't prepared for it. I had a kid. I was trying to work. I wasn't as focused as what I am now, that's for sure. But just to have that encouragement, because every time I went to my self-sufficiency meetings, I would have to tell her how I was doing, show her, what classes I was taking, my grades, and just having that extra support to push you to do it. Not everybody does, especially young parents. Like, it's not even just about the homeless part of it or even trying that. But as a young parent, I don't feel like there's a lot of resources that encourage young ladies to continue on and to keep trying. And yes, part of it is probably a little bit of lack of motivation on their part as well. But you're so put down, that was one thing when I got pregnant at 17, that everybody's like, oh, well, there goes your future, But that isn't true. You can do what you want to do. You just have to be motivated, and you do it in a different way. It's taken me a while, but I just continue to do it. It's not easy, and I have to pick and choose. And I'm a procrastinator, Like, I choose to spend time with my kids at the park instead of doing homework, but then I know that I'm going to have to stay up for that late night. But it was very encouraging to have that support behind me, because I had never really experienced that through any other program that I had ever worked with. They all just kind of looked at me like, oh, well, she's just another one, and it's not that way.
Of the 3 people we have here, 2 are homeless were homeless because of drugs and alcohol. And apparently that wasn't a factor for Tara. I'm just curious about the homeless people that are not homeless because of drugs and alcohol. Are there 1 out of 3 as represented here, or just how does that fit into the picture, I guess?
For me, I don't really know the answer to that question specifically. Mine was more of just the relationship. Like I had said, the relationship that I was in was very toxic. And I had dealt with it for some time when it was towards me, but when it became towards my children, that was where I drew the line, and I chose to walk away from the situation. However, I was fully dependent, and that's why that was the big task for me, was to become independent, because I had for so long been dependent on him or my other child's dad or a friend or, family or whatnot. It was scary to be on my own for the first time, you know, like I'm going to do this and I have to do this. Not even just scary because you know, I've worked jobs, I did all that. It's scary to be in a home alone with your kids, you know, like I'm not alone because I have my kids, but it's a different kind of alone. It's hard to explain. But mine was because of that toxic relationship that I had to leave, and I was a full-time student and a stay-at-home mom, and I had become completely independent. I had no vehicle, so I was pretty much left with just what I had and no further steps to be able to kind of take in the situation. I was pretty far along in my pregnancy. There was no hide in it, so that didn't help me.
You know, I'd like to say that's a great question, and I wanted to mention that. I'm glad you did bring that up, because when I was homeless for about 6 years total, I mean, a few short times in between before I went to rehab, I met many, many people who were not drug and alcohol abusers. I saw mental illness people. I saw people who just fell on hard times for financial reasons. I saw people who had been divorced and kicked out of the house. I saw lots of different people who were not alcoholics. And I saw some very professional people. I think I mentioned that before, that there were people down there who were better off than me, social, economic, and otherwise professional people who had just fallen on hard times for whatever reason, but they didn't use drugs and alcohol. And those were the people who helped people like me. They knew how to use their brains still when mine was fogged up, you know. So there are many people who are suffering. A lot of mental illness was out there. I saw that, you know, and that's a good question, because not everybody is alcoholic and addict. There are many people who are just, for whatever reason, you know.
And for other women that have experienced kind of similar situations to what I was in, I do know that there are great resources out there, the Friendship Home and other things, but I think sometimes there's not enough room necessarily at the time that it needs to be, you know, that they need the help. And unfortunately, you know, that puts them in another situation of going back or, you know, trying to figure out another way to go about doing it, and it makes it difficult.
With the Homeless Coalition, we do talk about reasons of homelessness, and I think that we tend to see people that have multiple barriers because that's what leads them into services and into the system more, is people that have more needs and more barriers. But there's a lot of different reasons for homelessness. So, I mean, just at Fresh Start, certainly more than half of the women that we have come there have substance abuse and mental health issues, but we also have people that come to us and it's more of an economic issue or a support issue. Sometimes they have families are very supportive, but they can't live there. There's not enough resources for that. And so it's not as common as you might think that everybody is an addict or everybody has a mental health disorder. I think that's just more of the people that we tend to interact with services. But really in our community, with 6 neighborhoods in poverty, as I mentioned, and with, if you think of your own situation, most people don't have a stockpile of money in the bank. Most people don't have enough money in the bank to pay your bills for 3 to 6 months. So homelessness is not a large step away for most of us. Thankfully, a lot of us don't have to face that ourselves, but it's really not that big of a jump a lot of the time. Sometimes it takes a lot of time to get there, as Roger said, and sometimes it can be one situation that happens and then all of a sudden you're homeless. And also, as Roger said, nobody trains you for that. Nobody tells you how to get out of that. So there's a lot of different reasons, and that's one of the reasons we're thankful to have this panel today, is to really highlight that it's not just one situation and one reason. There's certainly common themes that they've talked about, common themes about needing people to reach out and help them, being treated as a human being, the importance of being ready and knowledgeable about services to accept, and having people that are there to help you and be compassionate are all themes that they said, having that support. But the situations that brought them to those services are all very different. And many times it's drugs and alcohol or mental health, but certainly not all the time.
What can the average Lincolnite do, or person walking down the street? What would have helped the three of you if I run into you at that time? Or what could the average person do, basically, is what I want to know to help.
Well, Well, in my case, I probably would have hit you up for some money. That's the main thing that they figure you can do. But really, unless you're an Alcoholics Anonymous, the average homeless person, he's not going to pay too much attention to you. If you don't do something for him, he don't got time for you. Now, that's my situation. There's other people who may very well be able to get some help from somebody, a lay person. But for the average person like me, drugs and alcohol, the only thing a lay person could do for me was give us some money. I mean, it sounds strange, but it's true.
Along that same line, in your situations, it sounded like you had to make the step to find the help. The help never came to find you at all?
Exactly.
Right.
Now, the Veterans Administration do have outreach programs now, especially in Lincoln. Great outreach program, I'm sorry. But in Los Angeles, they had them, but it's so big, you would very seldom see them. But they do have outreach programs that go around talking to people who suffer from whatever and get them into the VA for treatment. They do have outreach program. But for me, I found out from someone on the street about the VA, and I was willing to go.
For mine, when I found out about the Community Action Program and that kind of self-sufficiency program they had that they offered there, I had actually called them several times before. And I don't know if it was just the way I was talking, the way I said it, what I was asking, but it was kind of difficult to find the help. And I think that people sometimes get discouraged. You know, they try and they're not getting anywhere. So instead of continuing to try, they just give up. And I wasn't giving up. I was going to continue to call until I figure out something, some way that I could, you know, just help me get my foot in the door, whether it be a job or something along the line so I could get going. And when that kind of fell into my lap, I was like, that's perfect. It's a perfect program. You know, I can do that. I can make goals. I can start from step 1 and go to step 2 and continue to move up. So I think it's just difficult to find those programs sometimes for people.
While you were homeless, agencies that wanted to help you, well-meaning people, were there mistakes they made? Did they approach you wrong? Did they just not understand? Do you have any examples of people trying to help but getting it all wrong?
Not me. Everywhere I went for help in either state were accepting. They understood better than I did what causes homelessness and how to get out of it. Especially Lincoln, I was treated with respect. I felt really good going in. The people smiled. It made me feel good. To go back to your question, too, that's one thing you might do for a homeless person. You might say hello, because they're usually invisible. You know, I wouldn't put myself in danger because, of course, there's that element. But you might just say, hello, how are you? Have a nice day. Just to let them know that you see them. And make them know they're still a part of society. That would have helped me a great deal. But I've never been mistreated at a place, in either place. If one place is so crowded that it seems indifferent or, not personal, because there's so many people. Lincoln, I found, didn't have that problem. Everywhere I went, I was treated almost immediately. I got everything I asked for, everything I needed, and many of the things that I needed, I didn't know I needed. So they told me about them, and it was very easy to get on my feet in Lincoln and to stay on it, really.
And for me, I think the only thing that was, that went wrong was me. I don't think that it was anything to do with the people that were trying to help me. I mean, the resources here in Lincoln, there's so many people that know all the different ropes, all the different programs. It's amazing. And I lived in LA as well. And, Lincoln by far has the best people and the best resources to get you back on your feet.
My last question is, and it's actually 2, you can pick either one, is if you could go back to yourself at that time, what is something or some words of encouragement you'd tell yourself, or to somebody that's homeless now, what would you say to that person?
If the situation was similar to mine, or I guess it doesn't even have to necessarily be similar to mine, but I would just say to stay positive, to keep trying, don't get discouraged. That you can really do. I never imagined that I would be getting my master's degree, or that I would be working on my master's degree, or that I would have even gotten over some of the things that have happened. But somehow I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this next. And I just keep doing it. And that's kind of what you have to do. You just have to have the motivation and you have to keep trying. And as much as you get pushed down or pushed away or people talk bad or something happens, you can't give up. You have to ignore all that negativity and keep the positivity around you, because that's what's really gotten me through it all. I mean, and the support system that I had throughout Lincoln, because I didn't have family here. Yes, I talked to them on the phone, but I didn't have the support system. Find a good support system. A lot of the people I worked with, I still keep in contact and just say, hey, how are you? How have you been? And they catch up with me, and they've become true friends to me. They mean a lot to me. They help me in a really hard time when I felt like really alone. So I just say, keep trying. Keep moving forward.
Well, I like to say that that's what I do. If I see a person on the street downtown panhandling or whatever, and I've been there, the first thing I'd ask them is they're a veteran. If they're a veteran, I'll ask them if they want to get sober, or if they don't drink, do you want to get off the street? If they say yeah, I'll tell them they're a veteran. I'll tell them I'll take them. It's not just information. A kind deed once in a while doesn't suffice with a homeless person. He needs transportation. He's not going to go. I know that from my own personal experience. You tell me where there's something to go and eat, I might go there, but I'm not going to go seek no help. I'm going to go and get my help out my bottle where it works. But if I see a person that is willing to get help, I'll either take him to Centerpoint, give him the phone number, or if he's a veteran, I'll take him to the VA. That's what I do. So, because I know from experience, I'm not going to go. And if I just tell them, go to VA, get some help, you can say, yeah, I did it. But I'll take them. And that's what happens to a lot of people. You can tell them where the food place is, but they don't have a car, they don't have transportation. You got to take them. And that's what, kind deed, like I say all the time, does not suffice. You have to act a good Samaritan every day. And that's what works for me. That keeps me sober more than anything else. Rigorous, strenuous work with other people who are suffering, veterans and otherwise. And I'm not a do-gooder, like I say. I mean, I do this to keep from doing what I used to do. That's right.
And Lyn, something you'd tell someone who's homeless now, or something you would have told yourself if you could go back in time?
Just don't ever give up on hope. It can be done. It can be it can be a short ride. It can be a long ride. Everybody's different. And just realizing my education was living it. And I was fortunate enough to finally be so tired of being on the street and depressed and just feeling like I didn't really want to exist anymore. And so I think it's mostly knowing where to go and believing in other people that they are there to help you.
Thank you. And I just want to thank the panelists again and express my personal appreciation for them speaking today and the struggles that they faced and how they want to help others in our community and just make Lincoln stronger and making the best community in the nation, like Community Health Endowment talks about. And if you're interested in more ways to help, I know that was one of the questions, start by educating yourself. There's a lot of stereotypes about homelessness, so just please educate yourself about what homelessness is and look for opportunities that you can help either individuals or through an agency. You can contact the Lincoln Homeless Coalition for ideas of ways to help as well. So that's a kind of a call to action to everybody here to get more involved and more educated about these issues. So thank you very much to our panelists. And Lori?
I too want to say thank you. And, it's not easy. It's not easy for these guys. I mean, they were all a little nervous when they started. I couldn't tell, but, they're showing you a piece of their heart, and that's not, an easy thing to do. And so thank you all. Monica, thank you for your role in this and for all of you for telling us your story very much. Our next, as I mentioned, our next series, or our next event is May 20th. I lived with mental health challenges. I would encourage you to come back and visit us again. Okay, thank you all very much.